This play is called Our Town. It was written by Thornton Wilder, directed and produced by Mr. Richard Telford and Miss Megan Mizak of the Woodstock Academy. In it, you'll see Miss Everling, Miss Slate, Miss Aarons, Mr. Valentine, Mr. Rillings, Mr. Harrington, and many others. The name of the town is Grover's Corners, New Hampshire, just across the state line from Massachusetts. Latitude, 42 degrees, 40 minutes. Longitude, 70 degrees, 37 minutes. The first act shows a day in our town. The day is May the 7th, 1901. The time, just before dawn. The sky is beginning to show some streaks of light over there in the east, behind our mountain. The morning star gets wonderful bright just a minute before it has to go. A minute? Well, I better show you how our town lies. All along here is Main Street. And, a ways over there is the railway station. Tracks run that way. Across the tracks is Polish Town, along with some Canuck families. Right over here is the Congregational Church. Presbyterian is across the street. Methodist and Unitarian are right over there. Baptist is down in the holler by the river. And the Catholic Church is beyond the tracks. This here is the town hall and post office combined. The jail is in the basement. Over here is a row of stove. William Jennings Bryan once made a speech from these very steps right here. But William Jennings Bryan once made a speech from these very steps right here. Along here is a row of stores, house blocks and hitching posts in front of them. First automobile is going to come along in about 5 years. Belonged to Banker Cochran, our richest citizen. He lives in the big White House up on the hill there. Over here is the grocery store, and next to it, Mr. Morgan's drugstore. Almost everybody in town manages to look into those two stores once a day. Public school's over yonder, high school still further. 8:45 mornings, noon times, and 3 o'clock afternoons, the whole town can hear the yelling and screaming coming from those schoolyards. This is our doctor's house, Doc Gibbs. This is the back door. There's some scenery here for those of you that feel they have to have scenery. And right here is Mrs. Gibbs' garden. Corn, beans, peas, heliotrope, hollyhock, and a lot of burdock. In those days, our newspaper come out twice a week, the Grover's Corners Sentinel. This right here is Editor Webb's house. And this is Mrs. Webb's garden. Same as Mrs. Gibbs, only she got a lot of sunflowers too. And right here is a big butternut tree. Nice town, you know what I mean? Nobody remarkable ever come out of it, as far as we know. The earliest tombstones up there in the cemetery, up on our mountain, say 1670, 1680, there are Grovers and Cartwrights and Gibbses and Herseys, same names as we got around here now. So, as I say, it's just after dawn. The only lights on in town are in a cottage over by the tracks where a Polish mother has just had twins. And in the Joe Crowell house where Joe Jr. is getting up so as to deliver the morning papers. And over in the depot where Shorty Hawkins is getting ready to flag the 545 for Boston. And naturally, out in the country all around, the lights have been on for some time, what with the milkings and such. But townspeople, well, they like to sleep late. So another day's begun. There's Doc Gibbs coming down Main Street, just getting back from that baby case. And there's his wife, Mrs. Gibbs, coming downstairs to make breakfast. Doc Gibbs died in 1930. New hospital's named after him. Mrs. Gibbs died first, a long time ago, in fact. She went out to visit her daughter, Rebecca, married an insurance man out in Canton, Ohio, and she died there, pneumonia. But they brought her body back here, and she's up there in the cemetery now with a whole mess of Gibbses and Herseys. She was Julia Hersey before she married Doc Gibbs in the Congregational Church over there. In our town, well, we like to know the facts about everybody. There's Mrs. Webb coming downstairs to make her breakfast too. That's Doc Gibbs. Got that call at 1:30 this morning. And there's Joe Crowell Jr. delivering Mr. Webb's sample. I want to tell you something about that boy Joe Crowell there. Awful bright he was. Graduated high school here, top of his class. Then he got a scholarship to Massachusetts Tech, and well, he graduated top of his class there too. It was wrote up in all the Boston papers at the time. He was going to be a great engineer, Joe was. But the war broke out, and he died in France. All that education for nothing. There's Howie Newsom, liver in the middle. Thank you, ladies. That'll do, thank you. Mrs. Webb, Mrs. Gibbs, thank you very much. We're going to jump ahead a bit here, folks, but before we do, there's a few more things we want to know about the town. Kind of a scientific account, you might say. So I've asked Professor Willard of our state university if he might sketch in a few details of our past history here. Is Professor Willard here? Ah, yes, sir. May I introduce Professor Willard of our state university? A few brief notes, if you will, Professor. Unfortunately, our time is somewhat limited. I'm afraid we won't have time for that, Professor. Perhaps a few words on the history of man here. And the population, Professor Wilder? Just a moment, Professor. Thank you, Professor. We're all very much obliged to you, I'm sure. Thank you very much. Yes, this way. Thank you again. And now, the political and social report with Editor Webb. Oh, Mr. Webb. Thank you, Mrs. Webb. Well, Mr. Webb is the publisher and editor of the Grover's Corners Sentinel. Well, that's a local paper, you know. Mr. Webb. And have you any comments, Mr. Webb? Now, is there anyone in the audience that would like to ask Editor Webb anything about the town? Yes, come forward, will you, where we can all hear you. What were you saying? Thank you, Mr. Webb. Thank you very much. Now, we can get back to the town. It's early afternoon. Quiet. It's early afternoon. Now, we can get back to the town. It's early afternoon. Just buzzing and a humming coming from the school buildings over there, and and now we can get back to the town. Some time has gone by. It's early afternoon. All 2,642 have had their dinners, and the dishes have all been washed. There's an early afternoon calm over our town, buzzing and humming from the school buildings. Only a few buggies over there on Main Street, the horses dozing at their hitching posts. You all remember what it's like. Doc Gibbs is in his office tapping people and making them say, ah, and Mr. Webb has got his lawn over there. You know, 1 man in 10 thinks it's a privilege to push his own lawnmower. No, it's later than I thought. The children coming home from school already. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Webb. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Mrs. Webb. Thank you, Emily. I'm going to have to jump in again here, folks. There's a few more things we want to explore about this town. I think this would be a good time to tell you that the Cartwright interests have begun building a new bank. Grover's Corners had to go to Vermont for the marble, sorry to say. And they've asked this friend of mine what they should put in the cornerstone for people to dig up 1,000 years from now. Well, of course, we're putting in a copy of the New York Times and a copy of Mr. Webb's Sentinel. We're We're kind of interested in this because these scientific fellas have come up with a way of painting all that reading matter with a glue, a silicate glue that'll make it keep for 1,000, maybe 2,000 years. So we're putting in a Bible, Constitution of the United States, a copy of William Shakespeare's plays. Well, what do you say, folks? What do you think? You know, Babylon once had 2 million people in it, and all we know about them is the names of the kings and some copies of contracts for the sale of wheat, and contracts for the sale of slaves. And every night, all those families sat down to supper, and the father come home from his work, smoke one up the chimney, same as around here. And even in Greece and Rome, all we really know about those people is what we can piece together out of the joking poems and comedies they wrote for the theater back then. So, I'm going to have a copy of this play put in that cornerstone, and people 1,000 years from now will know a few simple facts about us. More in the Treaty of Versailles and the Lindbergh flight. See what I mean? So people 1,000 years from now will know this is the way we were in the provinces north of New York at the beginning of the 20th century. This is the way we were in our growing up, in our marrying, in our living, and in our dying. A good deal of time has gone by. It's early evening. You can hear the choir practice going on in the congregation of the church over there. The children are all at home doing their schoolwork, and well, the day is winding down like a tired clock. "9:30. Most of the lights are out. Well, there's Constable Warren checking a few doors on Main Street. And there's Editor Webb, just getting back from putting his newspaper to bed. That's the end of the first act, folks. You can go and smoke now, those that smoke. Three years gone by. Yes, the sun's come up over 1,000 times. Summers and winters have cracked the mountains a little bit more, and the rain has brought down some more of the dirt. Some babies that weren't even born before have begun talking regular sentences already, and a good number of people who thought they were ripe, young, and spry have noticed that they can't bound up a flight of stairs quite like they used to without their hearts fluttering. Yes, all that can happen in 1,000 days. Nature's been pushing and contriving in other ways too. A number of young people fell in love and got married. Yes, the mountains got bit away a few fractions of an inch, and millions of gallons of water have gone by the mill, and, here and there, a new home has been set up under a roof. Almost everybody in the world gets married. Know what I mean? In our town, there aren't hardly any exceptions. Most everybody in the world climbs into their graves married. The first act was called the daily life. This act is called love, marriage. Well, there's another act after this one. Well, I reckon you can guess what that one's about. So, it's 3 years later, it's 1904, July the 7th, just after high school commencement. Well, that's about the time when most of our young people jump up and get married. Seems as soon as they finish their last examinations in solid geometry and Cicero's orations, well, they feel themselves fit to be married. It's early morning, only this time it's been raining. It's been pouring and thundering. Mrs. Gibbs' garden, Mrs. Webb's over there, drenched. All those bean poles and pea vines, drenched. All yesterday, over there on Main Street, the rain looked like curtains being blown along. Might start again any minute. There, you can hear the 5:45 for Boston. There's Mrs. Webb and Mrs. Gibbs, both coming downstairs to make breakfast, just as though it were an ordinary day. Now, I don't have to point out to the women in my audience that those two ladies you see before you there, both of those ladies, cook 3 meals a day, one for 20 years, the other for 40, and no summer vacations. They brought up 2 children apiece, and washed and cleaned the house, and never a nervous breakdown. Now, it's like what one of them Middle West poets once said, you've got to love life to have life, and you've got to have life to love life. Well, that's what they call a vicious cycle. It's Howie Newsom, delivering the milk. There's Cyclop, delivering the papers, just like his brother before. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Webb. Thank you very much. I'm going to interrupt again here, folks. You see, we want to know how this all began, this wedding, this plan to spend a lifetime together. I'm awfully interested in how big things like that get started. Well, you know how it is. You're 21 or 22 years old, and you make some decisions, and then, whoosh, you're 70. You've been a lawyer for 50 years, and that white-haired lady at your side has sat down and eaten over 50,000 meals with you. How do such things begin? George and Emily are going to show you now a conversation they had when they first knew that, well, as the saying goes, that they were meant for one another. But before they do it, I'd like you to try and remember what it was like to have been very young. And particularly when you were first in love. And you were kind of like a person sleepwalking. Didn't quite know what street you were in, and you didn't always hear what everybody was saying to you. You were just a little bit crazy. Will you remember that, please? Now, they'll be coming out of the high school at 3 o'clock. George has just been elected president of the junior class, and well, as it's June, that means he'll be president of the senior class all next year. And Emily, well, she's been elected secretary and treasurer. And I don't have to tell you how important that is. Now, there they are now, coming down Main Street. Hello, George. Hello, Emily. What'll you have? Why, Emily Webb, what you been crying about? Oh, you look all shook up. Now, you better have a drink of water, Emily. I tell you, you gotta look both ways for crossing Main Street these days. It gets worse every year. What'll you have? 2 strawberry ice cream sodas. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know, there's 125 horses in Rover's Corners this very minute I'm talking. State inspector was in here just yesterday. And, now they got these automobiles coming in, and well, the best thing to do is just stay home. I can remember when a dog would lie down over there in the middle of Main Street and go to sleep all day, and nothing come along to disturb him. There you go. Enjoy it. Yes, Mrs. Ellis, what can I do for you? Why, George Gibbs, do you mean to tell me? No, you keep your watch, George. I'll trust you. I'll trust you 10 years, George. Not one day more. Did you get all over your shark, Emily? Good, good. Now we can get on to the wedding. I've married over 200 couples in my day. Do I believe in it? I don't know. Ann marries Ann, millions of them. The cottage, the go-kart, the Sunday afternoon drives in the Ford, the first rheumatism, grandchildren, the second rheumatism, the deathbed, and the reading of the will. Once in 1,000 times, it's interesting. Well, let's have Mendelssohn's Wedding March. That's all the second act, friends. 10 minutes intermission. This time, 9 years have gone by, friends. Summer, 1913. Gradual changes in Grover's Corners. Horses are getting rarer. Farmers are coming into town in force. Everybody locks their doors much around here. This is certainly an important part of Grover's Corners. On a hilltop, a windy hilltop. Lots of sky, lots of clouds. Often, lots of sun and moon and stars. Yes, you come up here on a fine afternoon and you can see range on range of hills, awful blue they are, up there by Lake Sunapee, Lake Winnipesaukee, and way up, if you've got a glass, you can see the White Mountains and Mount Washington, where North Conway is. And of course, right over here is our favorite mountain, Mount Monadnock. All those towns that lie around it, Jaffrey, East Jaffrey, Peterborough, Dublin. And quite a ways down, right over there, is Grover's Corners. Yes, a beautiful spot up here. Mountain laurel and lilac. I've often wondered why people want to be buried down in Brooklyn and Woodlawn when they might just as well pass the same time up here in New Hampshire. They're the old stones, 1670, 1680. Strong-minded people who come a long way to be independent. Some people come up here and walk around looking at laughing at the funny words on the tombstones, and well, there ain't no harm in that. Genealogists come up from Boston, get paid by city people to look up their ancestors. Well, they want to know that they're daughters of the American Revolution and of the Mayflower. I guess there ain't no harm in that either. Wherever you come near the human race, there's layers upon layers of nonsense. There are some Civil War veterans, iron flags on those graves. New Hampshire boys had a notion that the Union ought to be kept together. None of them had ever seen more than 50 miles of it themselves. All they knew was the name, friends. The United States of America. The United States of America. And they went and died of it. This here is the newest part of our cemetery. There's your friend, Mrs. Gibbs. And let me see, there's Mr. Stimson, organist at the Congregational Church. And Mrs. Soames, who enjoyed the wedding so much, you all remember, and many others. There's Etta Webb's boy Wallace, whose appendix burst on a Boy Scout trip up to Crawford Notch. Yes, a whole lot of sorrow was sort of quieted down up here. People just wild with grief and brought their relatives up this hill. And, we all know how it goes. And then time, and sunny days, and rainy days, and snow. We're all glad in such a beautiful place, and well, we're getting ready to come up here ourselves once our fit's over. Now, there are some things that we all know, but we don't like to take them out and look at them very often. We all know that something is eternal. And it ain't houses, it ain't names, it ain't Earth, and it ain't even the stars. Everybody knows in their bones that something is eternal. And that something has to do with human beings. All the greatest people ever lived have been telling us that for 5,000 years. Yet you'd be surprised at how people are always losing hold of it. There is something way down deep that is eternal about every human being. Now, you know as well as I do that the dead don't stay interested in us living people very long. Gradually they lose hold of the earth, of the ambitions that they had, of the pleasures they had, of the things that they suffered, and the people that they loved. They get weaned away from the earth. That's how I put it, weaned away. And they rest here while the earth part of them burns away, burns out. And slowly, over time, they grow indifferent to what's going on and grow as cause. They're waiting. They're waiting for something that they feel is coming. Something important and great. Well, aren't they waiting for that eternal part of them to come out clear? Now, they're maybe going to say a few things here that, well, might hurt your feelings some, but, well, that's just the way it is. Mother and daughter, husband and wife, enemy and enemy, money and miser. All those terribly important things kind of grow pale up here. And what's left? And, memory's gone. And your identity, Mrs. Smith. Now, there are some living people over there. Joe Stoddard, our undertaker, supervising a new-made grave, and well, there's a Grover's Corners boy who left town to go out west. No. Saints and poets, maybe. They do some. Most everybody's asleep. Grover's Corners. There are a few lights on. Shorty Hawkins over in the depot has just watched the Albany train go by. And over in the livery stable, somebody's sitting up late, talking. Yes, it's clearing up. There are the stars doing their old crisscross journey in the sky. Scholars haven't settled the matter yet, but well, they seem to think that there's no living beings up there, only chalk, fire. Only this one is straining away all the time, trying to make something of itself. Straining so bad that every 16 hours, everybody lies down and gets a rest. It's 11 o'clock in Grover's Corners. You get a good rest too. Good night.